A very good evening, Sunday evening to you all. Good evening, Sunday evening, as Speaker Pelosi would say. Hope you all had a great weekend, guys. Make sure to hit the like button. It's been quite a day for me. I've been running around. I did catch something. When are you guys coming on the Left Coast show? Well, Mr. Dieter McBusiness, send an email, generationalchange at gmail.com. We're always happy to cross collaborate, as you guys know. That is one of the keys to success, especially as we're trying to build as much grassroots, of big of a grassroots movement as we possibly can. And it has been quite a day, like I said, for me. Been running around nonstop, but I like having the youth energy. Uh, right now, there are many topics that we could cover. And one of the things that I also want to do is I want to give you guys the opportunity to make suggestions if there are topics of discussion that you want to see highlighted. I'm always happy to take ideas and suggestions. Um, I think it's always important that we get as much feedback from those that are participating in the chat, just in general. Anything that we're going to talk about, I don't want it to just be about what I want to talk about. I want to talk about things that you guys want to hear. Now, I think we do have a couple of stories that I think are important that we're definitely going to want to address. And now, right now, as we look to Thanksgiving week, it's going to be a short week, which is good. We certainly don't have enough of them throughout the year. We could certainly use more of them. But Thanksgiving is definitely one of my favorite holidays. It's obviously a signal of the season. I will be going to New Jersey on Tuesday, and then I will come back on Saturday. And then on Sunday morning, I drive up to the Panhandle, and I'm officially a resident of Floribama. So that's going to be a interesting experience, to say the least. Tomorrow night will be my last in-studio show for the foreseeable future. That, of course, is ultimately going to change. I will still be venturing down to South Florida from time to time, but for the foreseeable future, tomorrow night will be the last show that I will be doing in studio with Jen. Going forward, we will be in different parts of the state, but still in Florida, still doing generational change. It'll be interesting to see the dynamic that will shift as Jen and I will now be facing each other instead of sitting next to each other. Although I will say that the space that we do share, it do stretches out. It's a little different than it used to be. We have a round table now, and I do think that we're definitely going to want to have some in-studio guests, and I hope we'll have the opportunity to make that happen in the near future. Um, Talk about politics in dating. Trumplicans getting destroyed in dating apps. No Trump supporters on vast majority of women's profiles in urban and suburban areas. Well, look, I can pontificate on this for a minute. I would say if people are dating for those reasons, if what you're looking for, specifically when you're dating somebody, uh, and I've noticed this for a while. I don't think that this is anything new. I don't think we're breaking any ground, but it does seem to me that a lot of liberal women, in particular, are very concerned about political affiliation when it comes to who they date. Now, obviously, because of Trump, it's been ratcheted up to a much higher note, but I'm also somebody who isn't very good at talking about this particular issue because I don't do dating apps. I don't do online dating. That's not my thing. I respect people if that's what they feel is the best way to go about meeting somebody, but I would not generally recommend it. Where I stand is I think everybody should go out and touch grass, and I mean that in the nicest way possible. There are many different ways to go out and meet somebody where I don't think that you need to be doing it on a dating app. I also think that women that are specifically looking for somebody who shares their political ideology, you have to take into consideration as well what type of a dating app it is that they're using. Are they using an app where they're looking for somebody to get married to? Well, I would say in that case, it's probably a good thing if they at least are able to deal with the trials and tribulations of dating somebody who doesn't share a similar political ideology. I also think that people are kind of overthinking this right now. This is one of those situations where people very often are going to make it out to be bigger than it really is. Do I think that there is a decent amount of women that are concerned about dating prospects of people that they don't agree with politically? Yeah, it's probably out there. I've heard some stories about liberal women shaving their head, wearing blue wristbands so that people know that they voted for Kamala and not for Trump. But those are the extremes. Those are definitely the extremes. I think that there are a lot more favorable people out there that are going to be willing to date based on a person that they feel that they can connect with on a multitude of levels that don't necessarily involve politics. What do you like to do for fun? Do you like to exercise? Do you eat right? Do you travel? Do you read? Do you write? Do you have a favorite movie? Do you have a favorite TV show? Do you have a favorite volunteer organization that you like to get involved with in your community? I think those things are more important than worrying about whether a person voted for Donald Trump or not. That's my opinion. Uh, but to each their own. That's what I say. To each their own. Uh, do I agree with women that are what I would consider, let's just say liberal, that they're caught up in whether or not somebody voted for Donald Trump? Let me put it this way. I didn't vote for Trump, but I wouldn't date somebody that gets hung up on whether somebody did or not. If those people are not fighting for issues that really matter, single payer healthcare, living wage, ending the wars, protecting our civil liberties, especially our right to free speech, drinking water, there's a hell of a lot more important things out there to worry about. So I sympathize with those that are dealing with that. I would imagine so, Zaina. I would imagine very much. And the truth is, I don't think MAGA cares about shit like that. Blue MAGA, on the other hand, yeah, they do. They seem to make that a point of emphasis. And as collective art design says, to each their own. That's the way it should be. Cannot continue to be lumping everybody together into one hodgepodge. I think that's a waste of time. It's a waste of effort. When we talk about these issues that are very important, there are ones that come to the surface that in some cases are made to be a bigger deal than they really are. Still a big deal nonetheless. As I've pointed out on this show and in my own political disposition, I do believe that when it comes to the issue of immigration, I am much more of a hardliner than Jen is. And that's okay. We can disagree on this issue. But I happen to believe that one of the biggest reasons why we have an immigration problem in this country is because we do have a working class population, especially labor, that is desperately trying to grow right now to feel their oats and perhaps start really building a foundation for the future, taking chances that you normally wouldn't see, like Sean O'Brien of the Teamsters speaking at the RNC, Sean Fain collectively bargaining successfully for the UAW union. But what cannot be denied is that we do have an immigration crisis, and we do have people coming to this country that should not be here. And this country has taken a turn to the right politically, not surprisingly, on this particular issue, which is one of the very biggest in the country. Now, everyone has their differences of opinion as to why we have transitioned to the right politically on immigration. I do believe that if the country were in much more stable conditions, people wouldn't be as much of a hardliner on immigration, but we are, because our economic system is not stable, just like our political system is not stable. So for that reason, I believe that there are two ways to look at the story of Laken Riley, excuse me, um, and how I would frame it in the context of why aren't we doing enough when it comes to illegal immigration? Because it is a problem. And there are certain types of people who find their way into this country, whether because they are being given a directive to come here, they are trying to seek a better life, they're not able to get that better life. But the case of Laken Riley was very clear cut. Now, of course, the conservatives were very adamant about this story from the very beginning. They wanted to use it as sort of the poster child for why we need more hardline immigration policies. Part of the reason why um, nothing was passed of real significance, even though the Biden administration has continued to build Trump's beautiful big wall down at the southern border. I do believe, and as Zaina points out, Biden's policies hurt migrants and communities at the same time. He didn't set up proper safety nets and prevent local impacts, not the migrants' fault. Well, I look at it as you're either going to have a reasonable checks and balances on immigration or you're not. And we do have a significant influx of illegal immigration in the United States, and it is directly affecting communities. Part of the reason why a lot of people have also looked at immigration as an issue to side with the conservative, or just say the GOP on, is because of articles like this one on MSNBC. The guilt of Laken Riley's killer was never in doubt. For all the political, hold on, for all the political controversy surrounding Jose Ibarra, the case against him was always a simple one. Yeah, it was. His DNA was found under her fingernails. She struggled with him for over 15 minutes. I believe he had attempted to rape her. She did the best to fight him off, and he eventually killed her. Jose Antonio Ibarra was convicted on multiple counts of murder Wednesday in the February killing of Georgia nursing student Laken Riley. Ibarra was immediately sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, along with other consecutive sentences for lesser crimes, including aggravated assault with intent to rape and peeping Tom. Riley's murder became a political rallying cry at this summer's RNC because Ibarra entered the country illegally in 2022. But for all the political controversy, the outcome of this trial was never in doubt. The verdict was found to be guilty. The sentence was going to be life without parole. Again, I don't know what type of a message you think you're trying to convey here, but this whole idea of we should have sympathy for the killer, it's already a line of controversy when a person is in this country illegally. It's another thing entirely when you are trying to paint this picture of, well, this poor guy couldn't catch a break. How do you think Laken Riley and her family feels? Now, I always look at, and I'm going to continue reading, but I always look at these types of stories in a light. The light that it's always looked at is from a very convenient one, from people that write for places like MSNBC. For the defense, this was a hopeless case. The defense did the best it could with bad facts. It almost surely knew it was going to lose. That's probably why it requested a bench judge only trial instead of a jury trial. Actually, no, that's not true. You have a much better chance of convincing one juror to not convict than to have a judge convict. Statistics bear this out in a very big way. So that was bad advice on the attorney's part. Again, I'm only looking at this from an objective perspective if we're going by the letter of the law. But you always want a jury trial. You don't want a bench trial. Generally, defense attorneys prefer jury trials, of course. One reason is math, the jury, blah, 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 same thing. Defense attorneys might alternatively push for a bench trial because the evidence against the defendant is both overwhelming and horrific. That's likely what happened here. The defense had no chance with a jury. Again, I don't really understand why they're framing this in a way as if to suggest that maybe something could have been done because this poor immigrant couldn't be supported, but apparently had no chance with the judge either since he was convicted anyway. So the bench trial was a good call by the defense. Saving the judge from a pointless jury trial might have been Ibarra's best chance at life without the possibility of parole. While you probably won't see the written in any rules or law books, in my experience as defense attorney, judges and prosecutors appreciate defendants who don't waste the court's time. Sometimes a bench trial can help avoid the trial tax. The harsher sentencing when a defendant opts for a 3-week jury trial instead of a 4-day judge-only trial. I guess that's one way of looking at it. If you're trying to potentially soften the blow in terms of the sentence. Of course, in Ibarra's case, the judge cut him no breaks. Jury or no jury, in fairness, Athens Clarke County Superior Court Judge Patrick Hager, who presided over the trial, didn't have that much to decide. Normally, judges have a lot of sentencing options. Criminal statutes often provide for a mandatory minimum of a statutory maximum sentence, leaving a lot in between. For example, when FTX co-founder Sam Bankman-Fried was convicted of masterminding a massive fraud last November, federal prosecutors asked the judge to sentence SBF to 100 years in prison, because he was going to live for about another 112. His defense argues for 6.5 years. Oh, that's quite a gap. It's often a challenge for a judge to determine what is appropriate sentence while considering the minimum sentences, maximum sentences, and sentencing guidelines. Not in this case. Well, look, these very cut and dry cases are a testament to what part of the problem is when it comes to this issue. Laken Riley, unfortunately, has become political cannon fodder, just like Jose Ibarra has become political cannon fodder. The way I look at it is simply this. We have a lot more crime that goes unreported or underreported, and violence against women is a very common problem in our culture. And so because of that, I've always taken the attitude of, well, if it was my mother, my sister, my girlfriend, my wife, whatever, how would I feel and where would I stand? I'm pretty ruthless when it comes to criminal justice reform. I believe that we are, first, you got to take the for-profit component out of criminal justice. That's the biggest problem that we have. The fact that that even exists is insane. When it comes to the issue with crime and punishment, I am very conservative. I do believe in the death penalty, but at the same time, I also understand that from a financial standpoint, life without parole is an infinitely less expensive endeavor. The other problem you have with the death penalty is that you get people sitting on death row for 30 years. The amount of money that costs it's insane. And so while I think it's always best to leave it up to the family to decide, especially with cases that are no doubters, the case of Laken Riley and Jose Ibarra, it's a no doubter. And as Jen is pointing out, capital punishment is inherently racist. Well, look, capital punishment is wrong 4% of the time. And for most people, that's just simply unacceptable, which is why there has been a movement towards abolishing the death penalty. It was successfully done at the state level in a number of places, most notably, obviously, in California. But ultimately, from where I stand, I've always believed that it is up to the family to decide. I think that's their choice. But I also believe, if we're being sensible, we ultimately do have to do away with the death penalty. As the old saying goes, an eye for an eye leaves the whole world blind. But I can't say that if I were in the position of, let's say, the Riley family, that I wouldn't be bloodthirsty myself. I'm just being honest. Doesn't mean we have to agree, but that's where I stand. And so, will we ever come to a consensus on criminal justice reform? I can only hope that people realize that the biggest reason that we have the problems that we have more often than not when it comes to policing in this country is the for profit component that is involved in corrections. If we were to take that out, we would be in a much better place. I believe. Not everybody's going to agree, but that's where I stand. And so we will continue this argument for many years to come, I would assume, when it comes to criminal justice reform. But my position is very simple. Take out the for-profit component and do away with that protective status for police. If we can end qualified immunity, that will also prevent a lot of these problems, because the financial burden will then be on the police and they really will have to think twice about their actions, otherwise face the consequences of making those mistakes. And the police will police the police. Say that 3 times fast. So I wanted to, the real story that I wanted to cover this evening, which I think a lot of you have probably seen. When you talk about racism, bigotry, especially in politics, we see this a lot. We see a lot of things. There is a consultant class industrial complex. It's a very big problem. And we see how well a lot of them are paid to spread propaganda, not just on corporate media channels. I mean, we get that a lot, obviously. But we also get some very disturbing individuals that are in it for the wrong reasons. We were able to cover this, and it was, needless to say, a very it was a not so good conversation. I'm speaking, of course, about Rachel Bitecofer, who has been in the news over the past few days because of the comments that she was making regarding Waleed Shahid. And we've seen this a lot with liberals, where they really like to throw people under the bus. But a lot of them are very ignorant in how they say things. They think that they're better, but they're really not. And so this is not the one, Colin. This is the one that she just put out the other day. I sent you the screenshot.
The screenshot's an overlay. It's an image.
Okay, I'll grab that. But this is just one example of the type of rhetoric that she throws out there. Being focused on a niche issue like climate change. Oh, I had no idea it was niche. I didn't know that. I mean, I thought that the planet being on fire was a real problem. I mean, but according to this world of wisdom, this person was apparently like a main consultant, or has been a main consultant for the DNC chair, Jamie Harrison. Well, that explains a lot. Being focused on a niche issue like climate change right now is like looking for a cougar where there's a grizzly on the trail in front of you. Now, again, these are those doom and gloom people that talk about Trump like it's the end of the world. That's just crazy. But this is the one that really did her in. So she made this statement. When Waleed Shahid wrote a response to the discussion between a whole bunch of, let's just, as I've mentioned, the Democratic Party consultant class, Adam Gentleson, John Favreau, Ezra Klein, Matt Iglesias, AOC, like how they threw AOC in there, Mehdi Hassan, all these people, these are all Democratic Party consultants. I call them grifters. I think we all do. But Rachel Bitecofer decided to say, I probably won't be able to stop the Schadenfreude, great choice of, German word right there, when Shahid gets deported, fuck around and find out. Well, this is a deleted tweet, so you're not going to be able to find it. However, she got absolutely lit up for making this statement. But as far as I'm concerned, I'm glad she made it because it's the truth. I have always said, if you think that the bigotry in the liberal class is not as bad, if not worse, than with conservatives, I don't know what you're looking at, because it's pretty obvious. There's a reason why in not left politics, but liberal politics especially, everyone likes to break up how they look at certain groups of people based on race, based on sex, based on gender, based on creed. All of these things come to the surface. How did the Latinos vote? How did the blacks vote? How did the Asians vote? How did the whites vote? How did those racist whites vote? And this is how they look at it. They look at it as, oh, I'm going to hold a gun to your head and I'm going to let you have it. But here's something that a lot of you may not know or may not remember. Rachel Bitecofer was a guest on our podcast, I would say it's probably about a year and a half, maybe 2 years ago. That's a very good point, Zaina, but we're not supposed to ask questions like that. It's too inconvenient of a truth. He's brown. Let's just call it what it is. So I'm going to torture you guys a little bit. Colin, thank you for putting this together. But here's a greatest hits collection of what it was like speaking with Rachel Bitecofer when I guess things were a little bit better because Biden was in the White House. She was being lauded. She was getting a paid job. Thank you, Jen. Yes, I did. I tried to have a conversation. I was trying to be rational. I wanted to see if there really was anything to Blue MAGA that was anything sensible. I guess I overthought it, and this is what we got. What is President Biden going to do regarding canceling student debt? Is it going to be, basically like a shave and a haircut type thing, or is it going to be like a serious type of debt cancellation? What do you think needs to happen right now in order to start, engaging more of, especially the youth voter, that needs to be engaged, especially in the midterms, if this is going to be, if we're going to avoid any type of a significant knockout punch, which right now is not looking too good.
Yeah, here, let me posit something that's going to sound a little crazy. Okay. Think about this. Like, what if, okay, so if he does 10,000, he does.
All right. So just the way she talks, I totally forgot how she sounded. And I can't put my finger on who she reminds me of. Oh yeah. Oh my God. She sounds like Melissa McCarthy. She's Melissa McCarthy. Oh God. I'm never going to get that out of my head now. All right. So there you go. Melissa McCarthy.
50,000. He does a full forgiveness. I mean, what would be enough? Nothing, right? Because no matter what he does, it will be criticized and then we'll move on to the next thing. And then the Beltway will decide, well, maybe if they just do this one thing, that will change. And everyone will be like, oh, they delivered for me, right? And that's just not how fucking politics work at all in the polarized era. It's not how these midterm fundamentals operate. Biden and the Democrats could have passed Build Back Better or not, and it still wouldn't have mattered because it would have been about what did you do for me lately, not last week. So it's tempting to be like, okay, well, let's talk about policy and issues and all the things that we want to advance and care about. And of course, unionization and labor issues are a core component part of that. But at the end of the day, what we really need to be doing is getting people to focus on the task at hand. And the task at hand is to prevent a fascist collapse of the federal government.
So this is basically the same tired talking point, and she was spewing this back in what appears to have been, like I was pretty sure of, was about 2 years ago, where she was essentially saying, yeah, the student debt cancellation and the healthcare and the education, yeah, that's all, that's nice and everything, but we've got a fascist takeover happening, and we just have to hunker down and vote for the people who are not going to give us anything worthwhile because, fascism. So the tired old trope was being espoused by this person way back when. And like I said, this isn't just some rando. This is a person who basically works behind the scenes with Jamie Harrison, the head of the DNC.
Right. The money in politics game right now. There is no big money in Democratic politics when you look at Republican Democratic differentials. Okay. Yes, our money system is fucked and we need public financing. but we will never have those things until we have veto-proof majorities in Congress and the presidency.
It's like the inordinate amount of things that he could have done and still could do with executive order and fails to do so. Those are all failures on the part of him as a representative of that party.
You know, no president in the history of our republic has issued more executive orders, done more governing by fiat than Joe Biden.
Okay, that is a flat out lie in a significant way. I don't remember if we even called her out on this, but that is an insane lie. Joe Biden, I think at the point, there was like a point, I remember looking at the statistic in terms of how many executive orders Biden issued in his first 2 years in office, which is usually when things happen anyway. I mean, obviously the GOP took over the House in 2022, but he had issued only like 70 executive orders. Whereas like, I think FDR issued over 4,000. It's just the audacity to be such a liar and to be paid to be a liar. I mean, that's really what it comes down to, is that they're paid to do this. They're paid to lie. I don't know how people live with themselves taking that money. I just don't. But then again, I guess a lot of people just simply have a price. She does it gleefully. On the one hand, I do think that she does believe a lot of the bullshit that she spews, but to make a statement so audacious as, ooh, Joe Biden issued the most executive, no, he didn't. And it's easily provable.
Okay. To be fair to him, he didn't create executive authority as a mechanism to bypass Congress. It is a mechanism that evolved as Congress polarized and as the mass public polarized, and Congress shut down. Keep in mind, the Republican Party adopted a strategy 10 years ago that is to deprive the Democratic base of any victory. So like their only fucking goal in government ever, other than tax cuts for rich people, is to make sure the Democratic presidents that come in do not get legislative victory. And that's their entire shtick.
This system is literally bleeding people dry.
The capitalism is imploding.
Yeah, it is.
The corporatism is imploding.
I think it's fair to say that it is.
Yeah, you know what's really funny is like I was in high school in the 90s, okay? And so like at that time period, it was absolutely fair to say the two parties' economic programs were two peas in a pod. But like the divergence in the two parties' platforms, even all around the economic issues, is pretty sharp in the last like 15 years. So it's really hard for me to look at the Republican Party, Democratic Party, and be like, oh, but so it is if you reduce shit, right? Okay, well, this person got money from AT&T, and you know they said they were going to get this telephone reform bill through, and they never did.
This is just a prime example. And again, I use this to teach, to basically show everybody essentially what we're dealing with here. What we're dealing with is these talking points, as far as I could tell, it's never going to change. Like this is not changing. They are not going to deviate from this idea of, well, we have to take the corporate money too, because they're taking the corporate money. And then the Republicans come back and they say the same thing. Well, they're taking the corporate money, so we got to take it as well. And then the endless cycle repeats itself because it just becomes this red versus blue war. And in the end, it really is about getting paid and nothing more. But she really did step in it with the statements that she made. But it's a total mask off moment. When you are out there, and we've seen this from a lot of people basically suggesting that, oh, so now that Trump is in there, we certainly hope you all get deported or who knows what, as if to suggest that that is, now you're going to be taught a lesson. You didn't fall in line, so now we're not going to help you. It's almost as if to suggest that this idea that the liberals will all of a sudden care about children being murdered, carpet bombed in Gaza. maybe they are going to be like Rachel and they're just going to say, oh, too bad. We were letting you get killed in a very bad way, but now it's going to get even worse. So that self-centeredness in the political grifting consultant class is very real. But I also believe that there is something to be said for just how depraved some people are willing to be. Thank you, Zena. Message me about Middle Seat. Would love to come on and share this story. It's a consulting firm on former Bernie staffers made $130 million off Justice Dems, Fetterman, Beto, etc. It's wild, and I'm not surprised. I would imagine that there was a lot of money that went around. I mean, Bernie did very well, especially in 2016 with his fundraising prowess. And there probably was a lot of people that ended up getting paid that ended up hurting the movement significantly. I mean, we've known people like that. And sometimes the most effective messengers, the most effective people that are trying to help the causes, white collar campaign carnies. That's what they are. Collective, I think what's really interesting about the human consciousness is that people think that, oh, this is never going to change. And then they make fun of other people who are saying the same thing. Well, essentially, history does repeat itself. But remember, it's all being done by people like this woman for a paycheck. Whether she really believes it or not is always hard to tell, because in many cases, they get paid very well. We've seen what a number of the grifting class individuals, like the TikTok influencer Harry Sisson, which I had talked about recently. Harry Sisson was paid $200,000 plus by the Democratic Party establishment in the past year to basically be a rabid cheerleader on social media, to try to rally people from Gen Z to just go out and vote for them. You know, that is incredible. But that is what the Democratic Party is facing right now. It's a crisis. It's an identity crisis, is what it is. If you are honest and in this industry, they will root you out, blacklist you, and you won't be able to find work. That's probably true. Which is why we're going to cover the story tomorrow night. Jen and I are going to talk about Bernie Sanders' email hinting at this idea that he may finally be ready to push for a third party. Well, better late than ever. But I will tell you that if Bernie does it now, even in spite of everything that's been going on, I still think that if he were to be the face, a spearhead for a real third party Labor Party movement, I think he could get millions to go with him. I still think he's got what it takes. I think people will forgive and forget, but it has to be for real. There cannot be any holding back or anything like that. I think that is, you don't need to trust him, JD. And I understand, Kat. All that matters is if he's willing to push and help build an infrastructure. The rest is up to us. But the signal needs to be sent that it is time to move on. If Bernie Sanders comes out and says it's time to move away from the Democratic Party, then that's the signal. That's what matters. I'm not looking for Bernie to lead and to make suggestions, because Lord knows he makes bad ones. I won't say any names. Let's leave it at that. But that would be the right direction. And that's what we need. We do need to be able to move in that direction at this point. It's essential. There is no going forward in the Democratic Party. It's not a question of if, it's a question of when. They have shown time and again that they're not willing to move. In fact, They're doing everything in their power to purge every last working class person out of the party. Okay. What more do you need? The proof is there. We just need to figure out how we're going to go forward. But as we said, electoral politics won't get us there, but it's a component that must be utilized if we're ever going to get where we need to go. Sorry, Mitznagi, but that is what the Democratic Party is now. They're fully capitalist. They have no room for any type of socialism implied with the labor movement. They don't want any part of it. None. They want to do away with it. Now, what's going to be more interesting is on the political right. Now, I believe what is happening is there is a real populist right uprising happening, in large part due to Trump winning and the coalition he built in order to do that. And I do believe that there is a much greater appeal to those particular individuals. Now, I'm going to play you a quick clip. As you guys know, I have mentioned it before. I'm definitely libertarian left in a lot of ways. I really like Dave Smith. If you guys haven't heard him, he's a great comedian. He does a lot of work with Joe Rogan in Austin, Texas, and a lot of other places. His political commentary, I think, is really solid. And he went on with Piers Morgan recently. Now, for those of you who don't know who Joe Walsh is, Joe Walsh used to be, I believe he was a congressman in the GOP, and then he was out, and then he basically became a anti-Trumper and a main fixture within the Democratic Party establishment. And so now this particular conversation is sort of a microcosm of what's happening on the GOP side, in particular, as it relates to somebody like Tulsi Gabbard, potentially becoming the head or the director of national intelligence. That's a big deal. And so the tired old tropes, yes, a different Joe Walsh, Henry. But this is very interesting. It says a lot about where things have gone, as well as the xenophobia, the Russophobia, all of that ridiculous bullshit. Let's assume that all of that is true. I would not qualify Tulsi as pro-war, definitely a Zionist, but I also believe that Tulsi is calculating. It's a means to an end. But that's not what Joe Walsh was talking about with Dave Smith. Context is key. So here's what was said.
Let me go to Jillian.
She's either a dupe or an asset because everything she's done the past 10 years and said has been exactly what Russia would want her to say or do. So she's either an asset or a dupe.
That's
but
the
she's
dumbest
clearly not on our
standard
side.
ever. Who cares?
She's on
If I
Putin's
said Saddam Hussein doesn't have weapons of mass destruction, that might be exactly what Saddam Hussein wants me to say. That doesn't mean anything. You see, Pierce, this is the trick here. And I'm sorry, I know you want to go to Julian, but the trick is that the same way they used to say Trump-Russia collusion, they wouldn't say Donald Trump's in a conspiracy with the Russians. You see, because that's actually meets the criminal code. And then so you just say collusion because what does that even mean? They could have had a phone call. Okay, they're colluding, but that's totally legal. So when you say she's a Russian asset, you give this wink and a nod like she's a traitor.
No.
When what it means, and Pierce, you disagree with me on this topic too. But listen, the argument is that there were 1 million off-ramps to the war in Ukraine,
Yeah, I
and
know
that
the
the
argument,
West
yeah.
chose to not take any of them, and that this war could have been avoided and it could have been negotiated away. Now, the idea that if someone makes this argument, your counter to that is to say that you're a Putin asset. This is so, first off, it's just despicable. And
the fact that he responded with, yes. Remember, these guys are paid to push pro-war propaganda and to label people anti-American. Say what you want about Tulsi. This woman is a lieutenant colonel in the National Guard. She has been a medic in combat. This woman serves our country, and admirably, I might say. We can disagree politically, especially in terms of the fact that most of what she does is very calculated. No question about it. But the idea that you're going to smear a veteran, an active duty member of the armed forces, I just, it's sickening. Call her a Shmuley loving Zionist who's doing it all for the career opportunity. And yeah, it's very career oriented with Tulsi. But the whole Russia bullshit, at some point, it's got to die. And it's just pathetic when people are still espousing this. Now, of course, Joe Walsh is a douchebag. It's so obvious. Yeah, and Tulsi's also an Islamophobe. But with that said, whenever they always go for something that has nothing to do with the topic at hand, you know it has everything to do with pays the bills. It shows you how strong and powerful the Israel lobby is. And Dave Smith is a Jew, and he is adamantly anti-Israel, pro-Palestine. That's the libertarian way, mind you.
It's profoundly stupid. It makes absolutely no sense at all. So listen, at least during the original McCarthyism period, at least during the House Committee on American Activities, at least back then, there were some communists. Nobody is loyal to Vladimir Putin. This is the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
You're entitled. No, Tulsi Gabbard, of course, is entitled to her opinion as a citizen of this country. But if for 10 years your opinion is identical to Russian propaganda, we are entitled to question that. And someone like that,
you're saying nothing, and I'm entitled to make the point that that's the dumbest argument I've ever heard in my life.
You both made your points. Let me bring it. Okay. Time out. Let's bring in Gillian. Been waiting very patiently to get back in here. I mean, Gillian.
Imagine being this much of a colossal shitbag. Joe Walsh, Rachel Bitecofer. It doesn't matter, guys. Honestly, it doesn't matter what side of the political aisle you fall on. At the end of the day, it's all about the green. Who's going to pay me? And Tulsi did it too. Tulsi went and worked for Fox News, got herself a nice paycheck. She's a great speaker. I've met Tulsi a handful of times. I've seen her stump speech. I was actually impressed because Tulsi remembered me when we ran into each other the second time. She remembered my name. And look, like I said, I can be chummy with her. I can get along with her, but I know a calculating person when I see them and when I hear them. Tulsi's extremely calculating, but she's good. That's why they have to come at her with everything they've got. But if you're going to do it, at least do it with something of substance. Tulsi Gabbard has a very positive view in many ways of Modi, president of India. Modi, you want to talk about a real nationalist? I'm talking about like fascist level nationalism. It's Modi. 100%. If you guys are not familiar with the president of India and the war, if you will, between them and Pakistan in particular, it's very real. And that is something that doesn't get talked about. And remember, just as base Chad would say, it is about the money. That is why it doesn't get covered. No, Henry, it's the people that are the paid propagandists that can't have a conversation because they're not allowed to deviate anywhere from their arranged talking points that they are paid very handsomely to espouse when they go on these shows. It's not a question of whether people look at them like they're fools and that they're just saying this stuff. Well, we have to remember here, and this is the essence of why we do this show. If we are transforming politics into service, one of the key lessons that we must learn every day. Very important. It goes without saying that we live in a very insulated bubble. And I'm not saying that we do not know what's going on here. We do know, but the overwhelming majority of people still don't know how the sauce is made. I do think a lot more people are questioning how things are done because it is confusing. But where do you know where to go for the right information? I have said time and again that almost everything that is done on this planet is done for money and power and nothing more. Western Ukraine has anywhere from $2 to $7 trillion worth of natural resources, and we want it. I would say Gaza, between its $500 billion at least of the natural gas that is under their soil, is part and parcel to why there was an attempt to eradicate the Palestinians from that region, because their first motivation is not money. Part of the reason why Israel is talked about at length the way that it is because it is a Western style democracy, which means that everything is about capitalism. Everything is about money and power. And it's not just a question of whether or not they're able to completely destroy Gaza, which of course is what they're doing and they will ultimately succeed in. But it's also from the addition to extracting the natural gas under the soil. It's the 25 miles approximately worth of coastline Mediterranean real estate that is also going to be in the trillions of dollars that will be able to be built. That's what it's about. It's not all that it's about, but it's a huge part. There you go. I would definitely say, and I will suggest this as we are planning a follow-up interview with Butch Ware, possibly Jill Stein as well. That is something that the Green Party should do. That's a smart move. If you're trying to build collective power outside the two-party system, there's a lot of things that you can do. But I do think that if you're trying to draw people away, especially from the two parties, especially the Democrats, that's definitely one of the ways that it can be done. A lot of people feel politically homeless right now. They don't know where to go. And that's understandable. I know that I look around and I do wonder what exactly, if anything, are we supposed to do? They're certainly wealthy in spirit, Henry. The amount of collective trauma, generationally speaking, that will go on for God knows how long, will be infinite. But keep in mind, that's a very good point, Adam. Modi loves Israel and calls Bibi one of his best friends. So that also speaks a lot to why Tulsi is so favorable. Tomorrow night, we are going to be speaking with Nancy Pelosi. You guys will enjoy it. I think I'm going to have to bring out the Bernie. Bernie's going to make an appearance here too. That'll be fun. We'll have some fun with that. You're right about that, Ro. You're right about that. Make sure that you are subscribed. Make sure that you smash that like button. Make sure that you share the stream. Every little bit helps. And make sure that if you haven't been watching our clips, go check them out. Make sure that you leave a comment, leave a like. All of these things help and make a real difference in the growth. No, JD, you'll see. You'll definitely want to tune in. I haven't specifically, I knew Mitch McConnell, and that's one that I've practiced quite a few times. But if you want me to get to tricky Tricky Dick. I could definitely practice that one as well. And I have been listening a lot lately to commentary that Mr. Nixon had made post-presidency, and he had some very insightful things to say about Democrats and Republicans. I think I could practice Mr. Nixon, and I could probably get him if I tried. So that's my start. There's Richard Nixon for you. I've definitely got a lot in the. I've probably got more in the chamber than I think I've got. Just got to practice. There are ones that I just couldn't get. I couldn't get Joe. I tried. I just couldn't get him. Come on, man. Oh, real. Yeah. Now, you know what? If you practice his mannerisms, I think that would probably get it done a lot better. But oh, thank you, Jen. I appreciate that. Well, if Jen says that I got Tricky Dick down, then I guess that's good. Aaron, we are going to be talking about this email tomorrow night. I do think he is I think he's testing the waters, is what he's doing. And it's time. It's been way past time. He should have done it in the summer of 2016. But with that said, it's better late than ever. I hope you guys enjoyed the show this evening. I am not going to be doing a show next Sunday night. That will be the one Pontificating with Pete that will not air because I will be moving that day. That's the moving day. Listen, anything's possible, but I don't want to make any promises. But we will be live tomorrow night with Nancy Pelosi, and then we will be live on Wednesday night. I will be in New Jersey, but we will be live, and we will be live with James Lee of Breaking Points from Crystal and Sagar. So, hope you guys are all doing good. Have a wonderful evening, a great Thanksgiving week, and I'll see you tomorrow night.